G'day folks, Uncle Knackers here, and in today's video I'm going to give you guys my first impressions of the very popular corded DeWALT DWS780 mitre saw, which is going to replace my old 10-inch DeWALT mitre saw, which was unfortunately taken off life support last week due to a nasty accident. And as you can see, I also have the stand for the saw, which was actually thrown in for free as part of the sales promotion. And if time permits, we'll have a quick look at that as well. No promises. See how we go. Now my first impression is that this is a very sexy looking saw. Is that appropriate? Can I say that? Or is it a bit weird? Now the obvious difference between my old 10-inch compound mitre saw and this brand spanking new 12-inch double bevel sliding compound mitre saw, that's a bit of a tongue twister, is the size and the weight of the machine. This is larger and heavier, coming in at 56 pounds, which is about 25.5 kilograms, compared to my old 10-incher over here that weighs in at the jockey weight of 13.6 kilograms, which is about 20 pounds. But the advantage of the 12-incher is a greater vertical cut as well as horizontal cut, and we have the ability to cut bevels on the right side as well as the left. Now look, call me old-fashioned, but when it comes to stationary tools like the mitre saw, I want a good dose of 240 volts running through that machine. I don't want the hassle of batteries going flat, and since this is going to be in my workshop 99.9% of the time, it doesn't need to be portable, which is when you might consider a machine that takes batteries. Now without a doubt, when buying a brand new mitre saw, one of the biggest questions is, how big do you want your cuts to be vertically as well as horizontally? Find that out and that will determine the size of the saw that you need. Now the vertical cut on this machine is pretty impressive and is perfect for doing things like baseboards, skirting boards or crown mouldings. The maximum height is 170 millimeters, which is what this board is here, so let's go ahead and give it a go. Like a hot knife through butter. Perfect. Now the crosscut capacity with the saw set at 0 degrees and using a basic sheet good, we can cut up to a width of 349 millimeters. One very important tip when using the sliding arm feature on a sliding saw, and that is always push through the cut and don't pull through the cut. If you pull through the cut, that can cause kickback, which can either injure you or damage the piece that you're working on. Now we can get a little sneaky and increase that cross-cutting capacity by removing the fence on both sides. And then all we need to do is to use that backstop as our fence instead of the original one there, and we'll get ourselves an extra 38 millimeters or about 1.5 inches. And to do that, just make another base plate out of a couple of sheets of plywood that sit on top of this one and finishes up being the same height as our original fence or a fraction higher, and cut that to 500 millimeters wide by 630 millimeters long. Too easy. Now to make a mitre cut, as with all mitre saws, it's simply a matter of moving that base plate either to the left or to the right. Now on this machine here, we have the capability of mitring 50 degrees to the left all the way up to 60 degrees on the right. And we also have positive stops at the regulation 0 degrees, 22.5 degrees and 45 degrees. Now this particular saw also has a positive stop at 15 degrees as well as one at 31.6 degrees, which is this guy over here, and also a mark only at 35.3 degrees, which is this little fella over there. Now these two are often used for cutting the mitres on crown moulding. Now to move that base plate to the left or the right, it's really simple. All you need to do is to release the mitre lock handle, just like that, and then depress the mitre latch button and away you go. And once you get to your desired angle on the mitre scale, just simply press down on that handle and that will lock the base plate in place. Now if we sneak around to the back of the saw, this is a really cool feature. It's the dual bevel system. Now dual bevel just simply refers to the fact that the saw is capable of beveling in both directions, as opposed to many other mitre saws which can bevel only in one direction, and they are simply called a compound mitre saw. Now to adjust the angle of that bevel, it's a very simple task. All you need to do is to loosen that large bevel lock knob and then just move the saw to your desired bevel, retighten the knob, and you're good to go. Now these two sneaky little black things are called bevel pawls, and they act as positive stops for the bevel action. So if we bring the first one across, just like that, and then lower the saw, it'll stop at 22.5 degrees. Push that back, bring the bottom one forward, and the saw will stop at 33.86 degrees. Push that one back, and then the saw will come to a stop at 45 degrees. Now that's a pretty cool little feature. Now just say for instance you want to use that dual bevel feature. With that yellow lever facing upwards, we can only move the saw in one direction. To enable beveling in both directions, you need to slightly move the saw to the left, then pull this lever out, turn it counterclockwise 180 degrees, and that will then enable us to bevel the saw in both directions. Now to get back to 0 to a positive stop, just click that around clockwise and the saw will click back into that 0 position. Too easy. Now one last thing regarding the beveling system, and that is we have this snappy little thing down here called the 45 degree bevel stop override. Now what that does is when you engage it and tilt the saw, that lever is going to hit that adjustment bolt at a positive 45 degrees. Now watch this. When we disengage it and then tilt the saw bypasses that lever, giving us the ability to bevel up to 49 degrees. Now that is pretty cool. Now another really cool feature with the DWS780 is this grooving stop, which is a black lever that folds down, and above it we have the depth adjustment screw. As the name suggests, this allows the depth of the cut of the blade to be limited, which makes this very useful if you find yourself having to do any grooving or trenching work. What an absolute idiot. Don't know him. Never seen him. Must be on day release from the lunatic asylum. To operate it, all you need to do is to rotate the grooving stop forward and then adjust the depth adjustment screw and set that to your desired depth of cut, like that, and then tighten this wing nut, which is the lock nut, and you're good to go. Now just be aware that sometimes that depth adjusting screw can be too tight to loosen by hand. If that happens to you, just use the blade changing wrench to loosen it. Beautiful. To start the machine, like most saws these days, they all have a fantastic feature where the trigger has a safety switch. Now when that safety switch is on, like it is now, you can't push that trigger in. Once you press in the safety switch, suddenly you can engage the trigger, start the saw, and away you go. And an extra protection feature on the DeWALT is that it comes with a hole in the trigger right there. That's so you can place a padlock through it, which will lock that trigger and prevent the saw from being used. As far as lighting systems go, I think this machine has one of the best ones on the market. It's called the XPS cross-cut positioning system. It turns on here with this switch. And what happens is the light then causes the blade to throw a shadow, which shows you exactly where the blade is about to cut. Now you can turn this on or leave it off. It's your choice. Now the bonus of this system is that it doesn't need to be calibrated. Unlike other saws that may use a laser, they may need to be recalibrated if the saw's been knocked. Now the downside of this system is that in bright sunlight, that light can almost be totally washed out. Now the clamping system on this saw is very good, and it's also very easy to install. All you need to do is to place the clamp in that hole behind the fence, facing backwards, and then just spin that clamp around, which will lock it in place, and then you're ready to go ahead to clamp your workpiece down, which should stop any movement that can lead to a bad cut. Let's face it, not every cut you do requires the saw to slide. So to stop that sliding action, we have a slide locking lever. So all you need to do is to bring that over and then hook that over that screw like that, and your saw's locked in. When you need to replace a blade, DeWALT make that process quick and easy. The first thing you need to do is just remove that power. We don't want any fingers being accidentally chopped off, and then lift the guard all the way up, which will expose that screw there. Now with the tool provided with the saw, loosen that screw. Don't take it out, just loosen it enough so that we can lift that guard up. There you go, and once you do that, that will then expose the blade screw. Then on the other side of the saw, we have our spindle lock button here. Press that in and then rotate the blade around until that lock engages. There you go, that blade is now locked. Now with that blade still locked, grab the wrench that comes with the saw and loosen that blade screw by pushing downwards. Just like that. Now we can take that screw out and the blade will come off. Now to reinstate the blade, just do everything that we've just done, but in reverse. Beautiful. The saw also comes with these very handy base extensions that just simply screw to the side of the base. Now like all mitre saws, this one comes with its own dust extraction system via this 1.5 inch port at the back of the saw, which you can just slide the bag over, which comes with the saw, or you can attach your shop vac to it. Nothing fancy, nothing groundbreaking, but it should do the job. Whenever you store or transport this machine, you need to lock everything down. So the first thing you need to do is to make sure that the saw is all the way back, and then lower the head of the saw and then engage this locking pin here, and that will secure the head. Then slide the saw over all the way to one side and pull the saw all the way out. And then to stop that sliding arm from moving backwards and forwards, lock that in place with the rail lock knob. Beautiful. And once you do all that, the saw then becomes much easier to handle, store and transport. And in this current state, the saw is a lot more compact, so it takes up less space. Now the $64,000 question, would I recommend this machine? Well, from what I've just seen, and from what I've researched, and from my past experience with a DeWALT mitre saw, it's a resounding 100% yes. And I apologise for not getting to the saw stand, but I just ran out of time. But if you don't have a designated spot on your workbench for your mitre saw, you will need a mitre saw stand. And I'll link to both of these products down below if you're interested. And just for the record, this is not a sponsored video. I bought that saw with my own hard-earned, with a healthy deposit from the very generous people who have over the past 6 weeks donated to my Buy Me a Coffee fund. I can't thank you guys enough. Having said that, if you found some value in today's video, perhaps you may consider a small donation to my Buy Me a Coffee fund, links down below, as that really helps me to keep the lights on over here, which enables me to make more content for you guys. Alrighty, if you want to see more videos just like that one, make sure you check out my top 7 mitre saw tips for beginners video, which should be popping up over there very shortly. Hope to see you there soon. Okay, after all that, I'm off for a cup of tea. So till next time, be good, be safe, and I'm out of here. Cheers.